10 Motown legends whose careers were cut short by tragedy. 10 Motown legends. 10 careers that should have gone on for decades. Instead, tragedy decided otherwise. I want to be precise. These are not artists who faded. These are artists who were taken by violence, by illness, by an industry that used them up and walked away.
Away from my guy.
Some of these names you know. What happened to them? That's a different kind of knowing. Let's begin.
Go if I have to beg, plead for your sympathy.
10. Brenda Holloway.
Yet you won't let me go.
Before I tell you what the industry did to her, I need to tell you who she was. Brenda Holloway was 17 years old when Berry Gordy signed her. Motown's first West Coast discovery, a singer with a voice built for ballads and a violin under her arm, because she could play as well as she could sing. By 1964, she had a top 40 hit with Every Little Bit Hurts. She opened for the Beatles at Shea Stadium in 1965.
Every little bit hurts. Every night
When Mary Wells left Motown that same year, the label groomed Holloway to be her replacement, handing her songs written for Wells, pushing her toward stardom. This was a young woman with real, documented potential, not promise, proof. And then the label made a decision, and it changed everything.
I can give you all the things that you want.
Motown kept her in Los Angeles, while the machinery, the songwriters, the promotion, the priority, stayed in Detroit.
Play, yet you hurt me, desert me.
She wrote to Berry Gordy directly, laying out in her own hand how she was being passed over for artists with less time at the label and fewer hits to their name.
I can give you all the things that you wanted.
She was responsible for her own choreography, her own image. No film work, no Vegas bookings, the kind other Motown women were routinely given. The complaint went unanswered. Her contract was simply allowed to lapse. By 1968, at 22 years old, Brenda Holloway walked away from Motown and largely walked away from music.
Every little bit hurts.
Her own song, You've Made Me So Very Happy, written at Motown and shelved, became a massive hit for someone else, for Blood, Sweat and Tears, while she got a songwriting credit and little else. That is the truth of what happened, and it deserves to be said clearly. This was not a career that ended. It was a career that was never allowed to begin properly. Talent without documentation is just genius with no witnesses.
Come back to me, darling, you'll see.
9. Levi Stubbs.
It's coming down. Now, darling, reach out.
Let me tell you who this was before I tell you what happened to him.
When you feel lost and about to give up.
Levi Stubbs had one of the most recognizable voices in American music. The ache underneath Bernadette, the desperation in Reach Out, I'll Be There, that raw, pleading baritone that made the Four Tops one of Motown's defining acts. He co-founded the group in Detroit in 1954 alongside Abdul Duke Fakir, Ronaldo Obi Benson, and Lawrence Payton, first as the Four Ames, then by 1956 as the Four Tops. And here is the detail that separates this story from almost every other one on this list. From that first year until illness finally forced them apart, the lineup never changed. Not once. 4 men, 4 decades, the same group. And I want to be precise about what that meant, because loyalty is easy to say and hard to actually live. Stubbs turned down solo record deals that could have made him a bigger star on his own. He turned down a film role opposite Diana Ross in Lady Sings the Blues. He had every opportunity to walk away from the Four Tops and build something bigger under just his own name. He never did. If this name was in your house growing up, you already understand what I'm saying. I can't help myself. Baby, I need your loving. Standing in the shadows of love. That voice was the constant.
Just look over your shoulder.
And then the label made a decision. No, this time it wasn't a label. This time it was his own body. In 1995, Stubbs was diagnosed with cancer. He kept singing anyway. He kept touring anyway, night after night, the way he always had. A stroke followed not long after, and by 2000, after nearly half a century of never once missing a show, Levi Stubbs finally had to stop. The voice that had carried the Four Tops through 5 decades simply could not carry him any further. He didn't vanish quietly, though. In 2004, for the group's 50th anniversary, he came back one final time to stand with the men he had spent his entire career refusing to leave. This name deserves to be in your memory after today, not for how it ended, but for the 4 decades where it simply never stopped. Real talk, only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's $1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. 8. Melvin Franklin. Before I tell you what tragedy did to this man, I need to tell you who he was. Melvin Franklin was the foundation of the Temptations, literally. That bass voice underneath My Girl, underneath Papa Was a Rollin' Stone, underneath Ball of Confusion, that low, rolling register that everything else in the group was built on top of. He was born David English, and he took the surname Franklin from his stepfather, a minister who had him singing in church choirs at the age of 3. By 13, he had already signed a contract with Berry Gordy. He was one of only 2 Temptations who never once quit the group. Not during the lineup changes, not during the years the hits stopped coming as easily, not ever. And I want to be precise about this because his story is not simple and it does not have one single cause. Franklin lived for decades with rheumatoid arthritis, diagnosed while he was still a young man. Diabetes followed in the early 1980s. In 1978, he was shot during an attempted robbery of his car in Los Angeles, an injury that left lasting damage. In the summer of 1994, he was rushed to the hospital with a severe infection that required surgery on his arm just to save it. Through all of it, He kept performing, an oxygen tank waiting backstage, a wheelchair carrying him between the wings and the microphone, until July of 1994, when his body finally would not let him go on any further. And then the world moved on the way it does. The Temptations received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that September. The hits kept playing on the radio. The name behind that bass line kept quietly fading from memory, even as the songs themselves never left the airwaves. On February 17, 1995, after a series of seizures, Melvin Franklin was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He never regained consciousness. 6 days later, he died of heart failure. He was 52 years old. That landed. I know it did. Take a second. Some artists give everything to the culture. The culture does not always return the favor. 7. Eddie Kendricks. Before I tell you what happened to Eddie Kendricks, I need to tell you who he was. That falsetto, the one floating over Get Ready, over The Way You Do the Things You Do, later carrying his solo number one, Keep On Truckin', all on its own, belonged to a founding member of the Temptations. Kendricks co-founded the group in Detroit in 1961, alongside Otis Williams, Melvin Franklin, and Paul Williams, after the two of them had sung together for years, first in an earlier group called the Primes. Martha Reeves would later say his was one of the prettiest tenor voices she'd ever heard in her life. And that's not a small thing to say about a man who spent his career standing next to David Ruffin. Let me be clear about what I am saying, because Kendricks isn't remembered often enough on his own terms. He left the Temptations in 1971 to build a solo career, and it worked. Keep On Truckin' wasn't a fluke, it was a genuine number one hit, proof that the falsetto could carry a song entirely by itself, without four other voices around it. You know this song. It has been part of your life for a long time, but knowing the song and knowing what it costs to keep singing it, those are two different kinds of knowing. Let me give you the second one. By the early 1990s, decades of heavy smoking had already begun taking that falsetto away from him. During a Temptations reunion tour, he struggled to hit the high notes that had once defined him, and a doctor examining his voice found what Kendricks later described as a small spot of cancer on one of his lungs. In 1991, surgeons removed the lung entirely, and then the world moved on the way it does. He toured Europe and Japan in the summer of 1992 anyway, still performing, still fighting, oxygen treatments keeping him upright between shows. By September, he was hospitalized. On October 5, 1992, Eddie Kendricks died of lung cancer. He was 52. He became the fourth member of the Motown family to die within a matter of months. David Ruffin the year before, two more names still ahead of us on this list. I need you to hold that for a moment. That is not a coincidence of bad luck. That is what happens to a generation of artists who built an empire on the road, night after night, decade after decade, with almost nothing in the way of protection for what that life quietly cost their bodies. 6. Mary Wells. Let me tell you who this was before I tell you what the industry did to her voice. Twice. Mary Wells was Motown's very first star. Before the Supremes, before the Four Tops, before Marvin Gaye had his run of hits, it was Mary Wells who gave Motown its first ever #1 on the pop charts, with My Guy in 1964. That single was named the top R&B recording of the entire year. She toured Britain alongside the Beatles, who specifically requested her as their opening act. And she got her start the way few Motown stars did, walking into an audition at 17 with a song she'd written herself, hoping to sell it to Jackie Wilson. Berry Gordy heard it, and instead of giving it away, he signed her and made it her own first single. You know this song, My Guy, has outlived every trend in popular music for 60 years. But knowing the song and knowing what happened to the woman who sang it, those are two different kinds of knowing. At the peak of her fame, on the advice of her then husband, Wells left Motown in a contract dispute, arguing that the deal she'd signed as a minor should never have been binding. She won the legal argument. She lost almost everything else. The bigger deal she'd been chasing never fully materialized, and her chart presence faded through the rest of the 1960s and never returned to what it had been. And I will say clearly what most people won't. An 18-year-old girl was allowed to sign away her future before anyone in her corner explained what she stood to lose by doing it. In 1990, doctors diagnosed her with cancer of the larynx. She had no health insurance. The woman whose voice had defined Motown's very first hit record was financially ruined by the cost of trying to save that same voice. Fellow artists, Rod Stewart, Bruce Springsteen, Martha Reeves among them, stepped in to help cover her care because the industry that had built its name on her voice did not. She even testified before Congress, urging funding for cancer research, telling them, in a voice reduced to nearly nothing, that she still had it in her heart to encourage others. On July 26, 1992, after a battle with pneumonia on top of the cancer, Mary Wells died. She was 49. And if this name is new to you, it does not have to stay that way. 5. David Ruffin. Before I tell you what happened to David Ruffin, I need to tell you who he was. That gritty, sandpaper baritone on My Girl, on Ain't Too Proud to Beg, on Since I Lost My Baby, that was David Ruffin's voice. And it was the sound that took the Temptations from a good Motown group to one of the defining acts of the decade. Rolling Stone would later rank him among the greatest singers of all time. Bruce Springsteen has spoken openly about being in awe of that tone. Ruffin's relationship with drugs went back decades and cost him his spot in the Temptations as early as 1968. But in 1991, there was a real second act taking shape. A reunion tour of England alongside Eddie Kendricks and Dennis Edwards, billed as the former leads of the Temptations. It sold out. It reminded the world what these voices could still do together. And then the world moved on in a way it should not have had the chance to. On May 31st, 1991, dressed for what should have been an ordinary night, Ruffin ended up at a house in West Philadelphia and split 10 vials of crack cocaine with another man. Just after 2 a.m., he collapsed. A limousine driver, a friend, rushed him to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. Doctors could not revive him. He was pronounced dead just before 4 a.m. He was 50 years old.
Go if I have to beg, plead for your sympathy.
His family has long questioned the full story. A money belt from the tour, reportedly holding around $300,000 in proceeds, was said to be missing from his body when he was found. The medical examiner ruled it an accidental overdose. Whatever the fuller truth, one fact does not move. A voice that carried "My Girl" to #1 ended in a stranger's house on a night that should have been the beginning of his comeback, not the end of his life. The next name on this list deserves even more than the one before it, because what happened to him was more deliberate. 4. Paul Williams.
One like you.
Before I tell you what happened to Paul Williams, I need to tell you who he was.
Unafraid, I can go. Well,
Williams was a founding member of the Temptations, its original lead singer, and the man who choreographed nearly every move that made the group famous. His lead vocal on "For Once in My Life" is to this day considered one of the most soulful performances the Temptations ever recorded. He co-founded the group with Eddie Kendricks when the two of them were barely out of their teens.
long before I knew.
By the late 1960s, Williams was suffering from sickle cell anemia and had begun drinking heavily to manage both the pain of his condition and the grinding schedule of life on the road. In 1971, doctors discovered serious liver damage and told him to retire. He did, and by early 1973, he had returned to Hitsville to begin recording solo material, with Eddie Kendricks producing his comeback single, "Feel Like Giving Up."
Could make my dream.
On August 17, 1973, Paul Williams was found dead in an alley near Hitsville, a gunshot wound to the head, a gun near his body. Police ruled it a suicide.
Lord knows I need her. 'Cause for once
His family has never fully accepted that ruling. The gunshot wound was on the left side of his head. The gun was found in his right hand.
I have love, I can make.
A bottle lay by his side as though dropped mid-motion. The gun had fired 2 shots. Williams had only 1 wound.
I have love, I can make it.
The official record and the physical evidence in that record do not fully agree, and 30-plus years later, no one has ever resolved that gap.
I can touch what my heart used to dream.
Whatever happened in that alley, one truth stands on its own. His own recorded song, meant to launch his comeback, was called "Feel Like Giving Up." It was never released.
Unafraid, I can go. Well,
Motown decided, after his death, that the title was too painful to put out into the world. He was 34.
for once I can say this is
3. Florence Ballard.
Ain't
burning feeling inside me. Ooh, deep inside.
Before I tell you what the industry did to her, I need to tell you who she was. Florence Ballard didn't just join the Supremes, she started them, recruiting childhood friends Mary Wilson and Diana Ross to form the group in Detroit. She sang on 16 top 40 hits, including 9 #1 singles. Her voice, powerful and full, was the one Motown's own quality control team initially considered the group's strongest. And then the label made a decision, and it changed everything.
Please don't leave me all by myself.
As the Supremes' fame grew, Berry Gordy pushed Diana Ross forward as the sole lead voice, effectively demoting Ballard to background vocals within her own group.
You wanna leave me behind, baby.
In 1967, at the absolute height of the Supremes' fame, Ballard was fired. The group was renamed Diana Ross and the Supremes, making the new hierarchy official in the name itself. A solo deal with ABC Records went nowhere. Her marriage collapsed. Her home was foreclosed. By the early 1970s, Florence Ballard, a woman who had sung on 9 #1 records, was living in the Brewster Douglas housing projects she grew up in and applying for welfare. The story made national headlines, not as a tribute, but as a scandal. In 1975, an insurance settlement finally gave her the means to buy a small home and begin rebuilding.
Baby, baby, don't leave me. Ooh.
She reconciled with her husband. She started performing again. For the first time in years, things were turning upward.
With a burning love.
On February 21, 1976, Florence Ballard was admitted to Detroit's Mount Carmel Mercy Hospital, complaining of numbness in her extremities. She died the next morning of a blood clot in one of her coronary arteries. She was 32 years old. She was the first woman posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It happened 12 years after her death, which she never got to see. 2. Tammi Terrell.
You don't have to worry, 'cause baby, there ain't no mountain high.
Let me tell you who this was before I tell you what happened to her. Tammi Terrell's duets with Marvin Gaye, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, You're All I Need to Get By, are some of the most enduring recordings Motown ever released.
Don't you know that there ain't no mountain high enough?
Born Thomasina Montgomery in Philadelphia, she was singing backup for the likes of Patti LaBelle by the time she was 13. She signed with Motown in 1965, and within 2 years, paired with Marvin Gaye, she had become one of the label's defining voices. She was 22 years old, and I want to be precise about this, because her story before the tragedy already carried real weight. Terrell had lived through an abusive relationship in her teenage years, and she'd spent much of 1967 quietly dismissing worsening headaches, insisting to everyone around her, and to herself, that she was well enough to keep working. She was a fighter long before anyone knew she needed to be. On October 14, 1967, performing Your Precious Love alongside Gaye at Hampden-Sydney College in Virginia, Terrell suddenly collapsed on stage, falling directly into his arms. Doctors soon discovered a malignant tumor on the right side of her brain.
Ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
Motown, by most accounts, downplayed the severity of her diagnosis to the public. Terrell kept recording between surgeries, 8 of them in total, over more than 2 years, none of them successful. She lost her hair, she lost her sight, she was confined to a wheelchair, and by the end weighed just 93 pounds.
Don't you know that there ain't no mountain high enough?
On some of her later vocal parts with Gaye, songwriter Valerie Simpson had to quietly step in because Terrell's own voice was no longer strong enough to finish the take.
I'll be there when you want me some way, somehow.
'Cause baby, there ain't
On March 16, 1970, 1 month before her 25th birthday, Tammi Terrell died. She was given a funeral at Jane's Methodist Church in Philadelphia, and Marvin Gaye delivered her eulogy himself. Friends said he was never fully the same afterward, that something in him left with her that day, 3 years before he would find the strength to sing "What's Going On" the way he needed to.
no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you.
This name deserves to be spoken slowly, and it deserves to be spoken here, right before the story of the man who loved her as a friend, grieved her as family, and was taken from this world in a way no one could have prepared for either.
'Cause you are mine, oh.
1. Marvin Gaye.
That's far too many of you die.
Before I tell you what happened to Marvin Gaye, I need to tell you who he was, because that is the part that makes everything else about to be said hurt the way it should. Marvin Gaye was not just a Motown star. He was the artist who forced the label to let him make the record he wanted to make, What's Going On, a work so far outside what Motown's assembly line system usually allowed that Berry Gordy initially refused to release it. It became one of the most important albums in American music. A decade later, Sexual Healing brought him his first Grammy and a triumphant return to the top of the charts. You know this song, What's Going On, has been part of American life for over 50 years. But knowing the song and knowing what happened to the man who wrote it, those are two different kinds of knowing. Let me give you the second one. By 1983, despite that career triumph, Gaye was in serious financial and psychological trouble, struggling with cocaine and severe depression. He moved back into his parents' Los Angeles home, a house shaped, by his own account, like living under a very peculiar, changeable, cruel, and all-powerful king, in reference to his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., a Pentecostal minister with a long history of violence toward his son. On April 1st, 1984, one day before Gaye's 45th birthday, an argument in the house escalated. Gaye intervened after his father confronted his mother, and the confrontation turned physical between father and son. Gaye returned to his bedroom to calm down. Minutes later, his father entered with a .38 revolver, a gift Gaye himself had once given him, and shot his son in the chest. As Gaye lay on the ground, his father shot him a second time, at close range. Marvin Gaye was pronounced dead at California Hospital Medical Center. His father later pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter and received a suspended sentence. I want to be precise about this because it deserves precision. This was not an overdose. This was not a stage collapse or a slow illness. One of the most gifted voices in the history of American music was shot to death by his own father in his own childhood bedroom the day before his 45th birthday. History forgot far too much about how these 10 artists actually left us. We won't.